Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday morning. Hope yours is going well. Let's talk a little bit more about the Shane Waldron offense. And we've certainly had no shortage of Shane Waldron videos from me this week already, but it continues to be the most interesting subplot this season for multiple reasons. Whether or not the offense works and whether or not the offense allows us to have a good season is very likely to determine the fate of this team for years to come. So it's just going to continue to be a hot topic until this season is over, good, bad, or indifferent. So, one game in, the returns on the Shane Waldron offense are pretty good. I'm not going to say we lit the Colts up, but we did produce against what should be a pretty good defense, and we showed some things in that game that were different from the things that we did before Shane Waldron got here. So, after one game, I think a lot of the people who were optimistic about Waldron are feeling like their optimism has been verified. Some of the people who were more neutral on him might start getting pulled over to the optimistic side. And the people who weren't big fans, maybe they're starting to open up a little bit to the possibility of there being something good going on here. And I want to talk a little bit more about expectations for this offense because when talking about the new offense under Waldron this offseason, I've generally been I've been optimistic about what Waldron can do and how his concepts might work with this team. But I was kind of spending a lot of this offseason throwing water on people who thought it was just going to snap right in place and be great from the jump. I made a frequent comparison to other brand new offenses getting installed with a good veteran quarterback and a talented offensive team that took a while to come together. The best recent examples would be the Packers with LaFleur and the Falcons with Shanahan. But now that we've had one good game, and now that people are probably feeling pretty good about the Waldron stuff for the moment, I want to make it clear that is not the only way this has to go. And there's actually a perfectly good example from recent NFL history that we can pull on to show that that's the case. Okay, so first, let's talk about the two examples that I used a lot this offseason. And I wasn't trying to be deceptive when I used these two examples, but I was trying to make it clear that this was a very possible scenario for the offense this year, and that we as Seahawks fans needed to not pull out pitchforks and torches after a bad game or a bad half or even a bad month of offensive football and just assume that it meant that Waldron doesn't know what he's doing, he's awful, he's terrible, get him out of here, get somebody else in. I didn't want my viewers to be doing that. I wanted my viewers to know better, to understand that this is a process that is going to take a little bit of time. And the example that I really like to use was the Packers. And we'll go into another similar example before the end of this video, but the 2018 Green Bay Packers, this was the final year under Mike McCarthy, who was also an offensive-minded head coach, so he was the driving force behind that offense. The team under McCarthy was bad. They started 4-7-1, and then he got fired, and the Packers ended up going 6-9-1 before the season ended. The offense, not that bad. If you take a look, their offense in 2018 was 14th in the league in points scored and 12th in yards. So slightly above average. Not really the problem. The defense was a bigger problem than the offense for sure. They gave up a lot of points and they gave up a healthy number of yards as well. So it's pretty clear that the defense was the bigger problem here and that the offense, while it wasn't elite like it had been in previous seasons, it wasn't necessarily the core of the problem. Nevertheless, McCarthy got fired, and the Packers brought in LaFleur to be their head coach and implement his new offense. So the 2019 Packers were much better as a team. 13-3, made the NFC title game, ended up getting blown out by the 49ers, but it was a great season for the Packers, great bounce back season for them. But you wouldn't really be able to chalk that up to the offense. And I've been over this before, but the offense actually was statistically worse. 15th in points, 18th in yards. So the offense was basically flat average. The record was better because the Packers were incredibly good in close games and because their defense improved to a top 10 scoring defense. So this first year in the LaFleur system, kind of bad actually. And if you drill down a little bit more and take a look at the individual games, you can just see the problems with this offense. First game of the year, they go into Chicago, 213 yards and 10 points. They get the win, but this is not good. Vikings, 335 yards, 21 points. It's okay. Denver, 312 yards, 27 points. Okay. Eagles, almost 500 yards, 27 points. They lose, but okay, a little better. Things are tracking the right way. Cowboys, only 335 yards, but 34 points. All right, this train is getting rolling. Lions, 450 yards. Okay, maybe this LaFleur thing's already kicking in. They scored 23 points in the win. Not a lot of points, but pretty good. Almost 500 yards and 42 points against the Raiders. Oh boy, this LaFleur thing is really starting to pay dividends. Chiefs, they play the eventual Super Bowl champion Chiefs, 374 yards, 31 points, the win, solid, very solid. They go to LA against a bad Chargers team, 11 points, 184 yards, what the frick. Panthers, nice little bounce back game, 388 yards, 24 points, okay, we're back on track. And less than 200 yards and 8 points against the 49ers. And I think the 8 points was garbage time too. So, yeah. And then you just keep going down the list. 322 yards against the Giants. 31 points, but mostly I think the defense made a lot of good plays in that game. 20 points and 341 yards against Washington. Less than 300 yards and 21 points against the Bears. Vikings, 380 yards, 23 points. Okay. Lions, 432 yards, 23 points. Decent. Okay, maybe they're starting to get this train rolling again. Seahawks playoff game, 344 yards, 28 points. Pretty good. Niners, 360 yards, 20 points. I mean, that's a great defense in Frisco that year, right? So it didn't really get better as the season went on. It was kind of like spiking up and down the whole season. And by the end of the Packers season, after 18 meaningful games, I don't think you could have said with any confidence that this offense was clearly going to go in great places going forward. It was not building to something special, and yet 2020 Packers, number 1 in the league in points scored, 5th in yards, league MVP Aaron Rodgers. And across these 3 seasons, yeah, they added some players and they lost some players as well, but a lot of the same guys. So this to me was the greatest example of a new offense being good, but possibly needing a year to really settle in. The other really good example would be the 2014 Atlanta Falcons, and this is one I didn't talk about as much because it's a little more in the rearview mirror, but very similar stuff here. The 2014 Atlanta Falcons went 6-10, and they've basically fired their whole coaching staff. Mike Smith, Dirk Cotter, Mike Nolan, everybody went, and they brought in Dan Quinn. Now, the 2014 Atlanta Falcons on offense were actually decent. 12th in points, 8th in yards. That's workable. That's definitely not bad. That's good. That's somewhere between good and very good. You can win with an offense like that. So that's not really why they were a bad team. They were bad because they had a very bad defense. In fact, maybe one of the worst defenses in football overall. So 2015, they bring in a brand new coaching staff led by Dan Quinn, but the relevant person for our study here is Kyle Shanahan, their new offensive coordinator. And the 2015 Atlanta Falcons did improve a little bit. They won 2 more games. They went 8-8. But it wasn't because of the offense that they did. They were 27th in points, which is actually bad, and 7th in yards, which is good, but also indicates massive efficiency problems. Like a lot of drives that go 80 yards and end up in a missed field goal kind of problems. Or 90 yards and it ends in a fourth down failure kind of problems. So, yeah, big step back. And again, if you go game by game, okay, they start out hot, which is actually kind of amusing when you think about it, right? Right. Early in the season, they actually go 5-0 to start. They're 6-1 at one point, and they're piling up these yards: 400 yards, 400 yards, 440 yards, 380 yards, 420 yards, 410 yards. Point totals: 26, 24, 39, 48, 25. 21, that's not great. 10 is definitely not where you want, but it actually seems like it's getting off to a decent start. And then we have 16 and 300 yards against the Niners, 21 points and 380 yards to the Colts, 10 points against the Vikings, 19 to the Bucks, 0 to the it got worse, right? Like if you take a look at these point totals, it kind of got worse as the season went on. So again, you would not have gone into 2016 thinking, oh, that Kyle Shanahan, he's got this stuff figured out. He's got that offense on the right track. They're going to be great this year. And yet, with a full offseason, what did the Falcons do with their new offense? 11-5, went to the Super Bowl, almost won, one of the biggest collapses of all time. And they did it all with a really bad defense again, because their offense was best in the league. First in points, second in yards. Matt Ryan won MVP. Julio Jones, historically great season. Just an amazing offense. It was like a switch got flipped from 2015 to 2016. And obviously, the players did change some, but still the same quarterback, still the same foundational pieces for the most part. I think Alex Mack was still there. And they just needed that extra year in the system for the most part. That was the main thing. And you just see how radically things changed, but they needed that season. And I was saying this offseason that Waldron might need that season. You might not see a very good Seahawks offense in 2021, and I was trying to encourage the fans to accept that and understand that while the team still needed to win on the back of their defense and be able to gut out close games at the end because they protect the ball, I wasn't expecting fireworks. But that's not the only path. That's just the path I wanted the fans to be aware of. That's just the path that I wanted to make sure that people understood was a very possible outcome. And if that was the outcome, it didn't mean that Waldron was bad. It didn't mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. It doesn't mean that we need to fire him. It just means that sometimes your first year calling plays and your first year in a new system, things might not go great. But let's take a look at a different path that an offense can go down when bringing in a new coordinator and a new system. The 2018 Dallas Cowboys. Let's spend a minute talking about these guys. So they had a good season, 10-6, won a playoff game, lost in the divisional round. Not a bad season, but they were bad on offense. They were powered by their defense, which was almost top 5. Their offense was 22nd in points and 22nd in yards. That is a bad NFL offense. So that offseason, even though they had won a playoff game, even though things went relatively well, they fired their offensive coordinator, Scott Linehan, and brought in somebody from in-house, Kellen Moore, to be their offensive coordinator for 2019. And let's take a look at how that went to get an idea of a more positive track that this new Seahawks offense could go on. Just to tell you guys that, yes, you can bring in a new offense featuring a guy who is calling plays for the first time and have it work well. Now, before I go into the 2019 Dallas Cowboys, I want to stress this is not a one-to-one comparison. For one, the Cowboys coach at the time was Jason Garrett, and he's an offensive coach. So when he's the head coach, he still has a lot of say in how the offense is called and the play calling. So it's not to say that Kellen Moore or Scott Linehan had complete control over the offense because Jason Garrett's an offensive guy. That's not the case for us. Second of all, Kellen Moore was in-house. Shane Waldron was not. However, they are both young guys who have been around a lot of offensive gurus who were calling plays for the first time. And how did it go for the 2019 Cowboys? Very well. Now, the team regressed. They went 8-8, missed the playoffs, and despite playing in a really bad division that basically gave them 4 free wins, didn't do anything with it. Ended up getting their head coach not fired, but let go. However, the offense took a massive leap forward and became the number 6 offense in the league in points and number 1 in yards. So with that rookie play caller and rookie offensive coordinator, they jumped right in and they put on a show for most of the season. And the Cowboys had a lot of talent. They had a good quarterback, Dak. They had a great running back, Zeke, and Tony Pollard's a great backup. Amari Cooper, he had a full season in 2019, unlike 2018 when he was traded at the deadline. Michael Gallup had a breakout season. They had Randall Cobb, who had a good season. They had 2 decent tight ends with Witten and Blake Jarwin, although Witten was a little bit of a roadblock in some ways. But it was a talented offense, but our offense is talented too. So I don't feel too badly making this potential comparison. I think that there's a real possibility that we end up seeing a more Kellen Moore-like result for the 2021 Seahawks than the 2015 Falcons or the 2019 Packers. Now, that's not to say that Kellen Moore did perfectly, and that's not to say that we can expect Shane Waldron to have a perfectly clear path. So the devil is in the details when it came to the 2019 Cowboys offense, and I'll go into that in a second, but basically the short way of putting it would just be that the problems with the Cowboys offense in 2019 were more game to game rather than an overall inability to produce fireworks. So don't be surprised if the Waldron offense kind of does the same thing, where overall it's good, but you're going to have bad games just because Waldron has a lack of experience and the players have a lack of experience in his system that's going to occasionally manifest itself as a bad offense. If you take a look at the game by game for the Cowboys in 2019, you can see where Kellen Moore fell short. First 3 games of the season, they played 3 really bad teams, 35 points, 31 points, 31 points, almost 500 yards in all 3 of these games. Oh boy, they're cooking. They're killing it. They're crushing it. Oh boy. And then the Saints, 257 yards, 10 points. They lose to a team that kicked 4 field goals. So, okay, bad game at the worst possible time. A game where your defense honestly played their hearts out and you still take the L because the offense is completely dead. And then you look at the Packers game. Okay, ton of yards, 24 points, but they were down 24-0 at halftime and then piled on a bunch of stats when the game was not over, but they never got within 2 scores, so empty calories. Against the hapless Jets, about 400 yards, 22 points, but again, they were down 21-3 at one point, I believe, or 21-6, and then they frantically tried to scramble to come back in the second half and couldn't do it, so empty calories in a way. Eagles, kind of back on track, 37 points, 402 yards. All right. Giants, they beat up on them, 430 yards, 37 points. Very nice. Vikings beat up on them pretty well despite taking the L, 443 yards, 24 points. Pretty good. Lions, 500 yards, 35 points. Oh, the train is rolling again. It's chugging. It's chugging. Big game in New England. Chance to steal a victory. Defense puts up a great game, holds New England to 13 points and 280 yards. No show. 320 yards, 9 points for the Cowboys offense. So the offense is clearly good, but they're beating up on some bad teams for the most part, And when their offense needs to show up the most, it's not happening. Thanksgiving against Buffalo, they put up a lot of yards, but 15 points, and 8 of those points were in garbage time. And frankly, a lot of these yards were in garbage time as well. Bad offensive performance in a game that you really needed to set the ship right. Against the Bears, 400 yards, 24 points. But again, a lot of stuff happened in empty calorie time when the game was basically over. The Cowboys were down 17 points in the fourth and then scored twice to make it look slightly competitive. The Rams, they beat up on the Rams. All right, okay, this Kellen Moore thing's back on track. Almost 480 yards, 44 points. Here we go. Offense cooking. They go into Philly. Biggest game of the year. Division on the line. 310 yards, 9 points. Absolute no-show in a game that would basically have decided the division crown. And then the next week, with their playoff hopes being eliminated even as they played, 520 yards, 47 points against Washington. Dominant performance when it didn't really matter that much. So that was the hang-up with the Kellen Moore offense. It was good. It put up a lot of points. It put up a lot of yards. It moved the ball. But I think because he was new and the players were new to the system, because even though Kellen Moore was still hired from within, watching those two offenses, 2018 Cowboys, 2019 Cowboys, they were doing things very differently, and anybody who watched those two teams could clearly tell that. So I think just a lack of experience led to the occasional bad game. So maybe that's what we can reasonably expect from the Waldron Cauldron. Good stuff, points, yards, the opportunity to win a lot of games, and every now and then, it's just not going to be there. And we as fans need to be ready for that. It's coming. And when it comes, again, it doesn't mean that Waldron is clueless. It doesn't mean that he's an idiot who needs to get fired. It doesn't mean that he's bad. It just means that he had a bad game. And if Waldron could do something like what Kellen Moore did for the Cowboys in 2019, where most of the games are good, and occasionally there's just a stink bomb that pops up, I would be pretty happy with that. And I think a lot of people out there would be too. It would show promise going forward. Now, Kellen Moore, I don't know exactly what he's proven over the last 2 years that indicate whether or not he's good or bad, but the point is, you can be a rookie play caller implementing a new system and still get big results. All right, I'm out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. Long video today, but had a lot I wanted to talk about because this is really the most important thing going on with the Seahawks right now. Very, very decent chance that Shane Waldron ends up as the next head coach of the Seahawks if things go well. And if it doesn't go well over the next couple years, then who knows where this team is going. So this stuff is important. Hopefully we got it right. Hopefully we can see results more like this in 2021. All right, see you guys later.